These are turbulent times, and in a very real sense, what we're facing now is unprecedented in living memory. A lot of the time when people attend my programs, what they take away are important principles that can be summarized neatly. Like, say, for example, good thing, bad thing, who knows, which is the most important lessons people take away. I have another equally important short form by which persons can deal with the situation they're facing now, and there are two levels. So let me talk about that. I have a lot of calls from people who have taken my program, and there is fear in the air. Oh my God, what's going to happen? There is rampant illness. People are dying. The economy is shutting down. I may lose my job, and so on. All of that is mental chatter. And what I would like you to know is mental chatter is fake news. Let me repeat that. Mental chatter is fake news. We construct these elaborate scenarios of all of the things that are going to happen. Then we react to the scenarios that we have constructed, and then we feel fear, sometimes overwhelming fear, panic, and so on. So there are two levels at which I want to address this. Level number one is, for the vast majority of persons, these scenarios that we are playing out and constructing and living in are not going to happen. Even if you do get coronavirus, the odds are overwhelming that you will recover and life will go on. That's level one. But level number two, which cannot be ignored, is that you may be that minority that actually does become seriously ill. You may have elderly relatives or people who get it and they may die. That is not a possibility that can be discounted, and I'm not downplaying it at all. That is a possibility. So the level two comes down to the internal chatter that we have in our heads. Oh, I've lost my job. All of these terrible things have happened. I've lost my source of income. My life is destroyed. I can never get back. This is a tragedy of the worst possible dimension. For people who are in that space or who are confronted with that, I would like to tell a story. This is a story about a book and a man. The man was a pilgrim, or he called himself a pilgrim, and he lived in Russia in the late 19th century. Nobody knows who the pilgrim was. His diary was discovered in a monastery in Greece in the early 20th century and translated, and it immediately became a spiritual classic read by millions. So the pilgrim, nobody knows who he was a peasant who roamed around in Siberia and Ukraine in the late 19th century, and the only thing he had was a torn woolen coat, a copy of the Bible, and the Philokalia. And he was ceaselessly repeating the Jesus prayer. And just by reading his account, you know what a deep sense of spiritual aliveness was in him. He was truly radiantly alive. And all you have to do is read a section of his journal to know how radiantly alive he was. And as I said, he was in Siberia, only had a torn woolen coat, a copy of the Bible and the Philokalia, and nothing else. He had a dislocated shoulder, nobody to fix it, so he was in pain. And in those circumstances, he was radiantly alive and full of the joy of life. The reason I bring that up is to show that this is humanly possible. Of course, you'll immediately come down to say, but I'm not like that. I need this, whatever this is, and I need to have a certain amount of that. I need to know that my friends and relatives are well and not suffering and all the rest of that. I grant you that. But understand that the world is beyond our control. And whether you like it or not, stuff happens. And when stuff happens, you can either resist what is, and in that case, you will become tremendously psychologically sick. Or you can accept the fact that this is not what I wanted to have happen, but nevertheless, it did happen. I am going to try my level best to change things around, and it's incumbent upon you to do that. But as you're trying your level best to change things around, you will do it from the space of complete acceptance and radiantly alive. And that is possible. And the story I just told you about the pilgrim shows you what is our potential. It's a potential every one of us has. So, yes, stuff will happen. You cannot resist it, because in the process of resisting it, you can make yourself very, very, very sick. So this is the time to practice what I call radical acceptance. Whatever is put in front of you, accept it gratefully, embrace it. From that position of embracing it, you then go around to try to change it, but change it from the emotional space of acceptance and gratitude. This is not easy. I will readily grant you that it's not easy. But if you look at examples of people who have done it, the pilgrim is one example. Another example is an Indian sage like Ramana Maharshi, and the only thing he owned was his loincloth and in Sanskrit we call it kamandalu, or water pot, and that's the only thing he owned. And he lived on a mountain and, didn't even know what we consider necessary luxuries. There are people like that who serve as beacons. They are ideals. We may or may not reach the ideal, but knowing that this is possible is highly liberating in a time like this. So to summarize, there are two levels. Level number one, the vast majority of us are not going to face the kind of deprivations that we have created in our imaginary scenarios, and then we live in what we have created and experience it as such. Mental chatter is fake news. A small percentage of us might find that some parts of our scenario do come alive. We might lose our job. We might be foreclosed out of our home. We might have loved ones become very seriously sick and perhaps even die. And in those cases, we will do what is appropriate to alleviate the sufferings of those affected, but we will recognize that even in the most dire circumstances, it is possible for us to be radiantly alive, have a life of deep meaning and purpose, and that is not dependent on external circumstances. So in a sense, people who are so affected, it's like being thrown in the swimming pool. You either learn to keep yourself afloat and swim in a fashion very fast, or you drown. Hate to see any members drown. Be radiantly alive. Radiantly alive means that you have a very, very, very deep feeling of well-being. It permeates every cell of your body. You feel terrific. I must tell you that being radiantly alive is independent of physical well-being. It is possible for you to be suffering from the flu. It is possible for you to be running a fever. And in the midst of that, you can still be radiantly alive because you're not identifying with the things that are wrong with your body. This is the important point. So important, I'm going to stress it. Your awareness is like a flashlight. What does a flashlight do? A flashlight illuminates whatever you shine it on. You have a flashlight, you shine it on your computer, it illuminates the computer. Shine it on the floor, it lights up the floor. Most of the time, we are in the habit of shining our flashlight on the things that are wrong in our lives, more precisely the things that we have defined as wrong in our life. Change that around. Shine your flashlight on the joy of being alive, on the wonders of the universe. And if you can consistently shine your flashlight on that, you'll find that you deal with whatever is, quote, wrong, unquote, in your life, but you will do it from the space of being radiantly alive. Your awareness is like a flashlight, and you have the ability to direct it at whatever you want to direct it. Remember that. Because if you shine your flashlight on, I just lost my job, I have an unemployment coming in, unemployment is only going to last for a certain amount of time, what am I going to do after that? I may be thrown out of my house, will I have enough to eat? What about my family? What about my wife, my children? How are they going to survive? This is mental chatter that is taking over your life. you have the ability. It is not easy, but it is possible for you to not shine the light of your awareness on this, but shine the light of your awareness on, I am still reasonably healthy. I have some weeks of unemployment. I'm going to use this opportunity to do what I can, to whatever is necessary, generate additional income, get some measure of certitude in terms of income for my wife, children. I may succeed, I may not succeed, but I'm going to try my level best. But I'm going to do it from the space of being radiantly alive. It is not easy, I grant you that. But, this is like in a time of war, all of a sudden you have to step up to a need and you're capable of doing things you never would have otherwise. Be aware of the fact that your awareness is a flashlight. Refuse to shine it on things that take you into despair. Constantly, consciously, deliberately shine it on the things that are working, the things that give you hope. Don't shine it on what you think are the problems in your life. Very often what you think are problems in your life are merely circumstances that help you grow. Mental chatter is fake news. We create scenarios in our heads of all the terrible things that can happen, and having created it, we then live in it. We are creating the matrix that we live in. Don't do that. That's true of the overwhelming majority. In a tiny minority, it turns out that your worst scenario does come true. You may lose your job. People close to you may fall ill. But then you have to go a level deeper, because then you're talking about, oh my God, this is so terrible. My life is ended. I'm never going to recover from that. And the short answer is no, it's not true. And even if some of the external circumstances change, your ability to maintain a radiantly alive life is not impaired. Example of the pilgrim shows that this is human potential. The pilgrim is all of us, or can be, if we let go of our notion that the world has to be a particular way for us to feel good. That's a big myth. You have no control over it. So stop resisting what the world presents to you. You have zero control. You think you have control, but you don't. Something unexpected has happened many times in your life, and it will happen again. When that happens, just recognize and accept it. Don't just accept it, embrace it. That will take you to an emotional domain of joy and being radiantly alive. And from that domain, you then go out and make the changes that you would like to have happen. Again, you may succeed, you may not succeed, but the interesting thing is your learning and growth will happen not because you succeed, but from the sincere effort that you put in. The mistake we make in setting a goal for ourselves and trying our level best to achieve the goal, we think that we do it in order to achieve the goal, and that's the benefit. Wrong. The benefit of setting a goal and trying our level best to achieve that goal is the learning and growth that happen in us and to us as we try our level best to achieve the goal. If we actually achieve the goal, that's a bonus, fantastic. If we don't achieve the goal, the learning and growth have happened already, so we're ahead of the game. It's a no-lose scenario. Invest in the process. Do not invest in the outcome. The outcome is beyond your control. Always has been, always will be. In fact, you're far more likely to attain the goals if you approach those goals from a place of I'm radiantly fulfilled and alive. What I would recommend in a time like this is think, what is it that I can contribute to make persons in my circle feel better about their circumstances, their situation, and about life in general? I'm going to focus in concentric circles. First circle would be persons immediately around me, my family, persons I'm close to, my colleagues at work, and so on. And then broader humanity, what I can contribute which will leave them better off, and not just physically better off, psychologically, which I think in many ways is more important. How can they feel more upbeat? Many of my coaching clients are in grave difficulty. Some have already lost their businesses. Others, it might happen. And many of them have canceled their coaching contracts, and that's fine. But I'm going to continue to coach them anyway. because I'm not going to let go of them at a time like this. Even if it's just one person, even if it's your wife or husband, your partner, your children, you have to be an anchor at a time like this. Here is something else I want to share. We are always emitting vibrations on a subtle level which are picked up by people. I'm sure every single person has come across someone who's so anxious, so nervous, so on edge that being in that person's presence sets you off. Radiate calm. When you radiate calm, when you are a pillar solidly grounded, that also is picked up, and you calm nervous people just a bit. And that itself is your contribution. And especially when you are a head of a household or a co-head of a household, there are children, there are elderly parents, people like that. When you are a pillar of calm, that communicates itself. And just by being anchored in that stillness, you're helping the people in your life. So don't get hung up on, Srikumar has an audience, he reached the thousands or tens of thousands. Don't get hung up on that, because that is an outcome. That is focusing on an outcome rather than on the process. Just be who you are. In times of turbulence like this, there are so many people who step out of their shell to serve a broader purpose. In New York alone, more than several thousand retired medical professionals, doctors, nurses, paramedics, have come back to help. Ramakrishna said it beautifully. He said, "The purpose of the flower is to bloom, and when the flower blooms, the bee will find it. Your job is to bloom. And when you bloom, the bees will find you." Mental chatter is fake news. Don't create your world with the mental chatter and don't live in it. Shine the flashlight of your awareness on what it is that you can do to help others. Don't shine it on what you have defined as problems. Invest in the process. Do not invest in the outcome. You will be twice blessed over. And in times of turbulence like this, remember the pilgrim. He shows you what human potential is all about. Yes, you may be distance away, but the knowledge that this is possible will be of great help and succor to you.
I started my PhD at Columbia, and I dropped out and started working for corporations. And initially, I dropped out of Columbia Business School for a while to work as an executive at Warner Communications, and I was hugely successful. But then I got tired of corporate politics, and I decided, let me go to academia where there is no politics. I was sadly mistaken. I found out that politics is alive and well in academia. And after a few years, I felt stuck. I was really sorry for myself because I was stagnating. My peers had gone far ahead of me, and I was stuck in a university not doing particularly well and feeling really sorry for myself. All my life, I'd been doing a lot of reading, spiritual biography, mystical autobiography that would take me to a nice place. And then I came back to the real world, and it sucked. And I remember thinking that if all of this is useful only if I was sitting quietly thinking peaceful thoughts and not when I came to the hurly-burly, then it's actually pretty useless. But somehow I knew it wasn't true. Somehow I knew this was very valuable, maybe even the only thing that was valuable. I just hadn't figured out how to make use of it. So one day I got my brilliant idea, which is, why don't I take the teachings of the world's great masters, strip them of religious, cultural, and other connotations, and adapt them so that they're acceptable to intelligent people in a post-industrial society. And the thought of doing something like that made me come alive. Forget about others. I needed to create this course for me. I was a marketing guy, so every time I came up with a bright idea, my immediate question was, will others be interested? Is there a market for this? My initial reaction was, I teach MBA students. We all know what motivates MBAs. Nobody's going to enroll for the course, and that was fine. If they did, wonderful. If they didn't, God bless them. I was going to create this course because I needed this for me. So I did. I offered it at Long Island University. It did well. I modified it and offered it again. It did better. Then I moved it to Columbia Business School, and after a couple of years, it exploded. It was the only course at Columbia Business School which was a university-wide draw. I had students from business school, from law school, from the School of International and Public Affairs, from journalism, from Teachers College, all over. So subsequently it spread by word of mouth, and I've taught it at London Business School, at Kellogg, at Berkeley, and I'm still teaching it at major institutions. We are all suffering a great deal of stress, and the degree of stress is increasing. And I find increasingly persons feel that they are beaten, feel that life is against them. And it doesn't have to be so. As a matter of fact, I teach not resilience, but extreme resilience. In extreme resilience, you bounce back so quickly from adversity that somebody from outside would not even know that you've suffered a setback. And this is possible. It's possible for you. There are several things that we can do to become extremely resilient. First, good thing, bad thing, who knows? This actually derives from a Sufi tale. There was a man and his son who lived in a valley, and they were very happy, and they were also dirt poor. And the man decided that he wanted to become rich, and he bought a stallion because he intended to breed horses. And the very night that he bought the stallion, it kicked the top bar loose from the paddock where he housed it and escaped. All the villagers ran around him commiserating. They said, "You wanted to be a rich man, but your stallion ran away and you still owe us money." The man shrugged his shoulder and said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" The stallion fell in with a group of wild horses, and the man was able to entice them into the paddock which he had repaired, so escape was no longer possible. So all of a sudden now he had his stallion back plus about a dozen horses, and by the standards of that village, that made him a rich man. The villagers came around to congratulate him. They said, "We thought you were destitute, but fortune has smiled upon you." And he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" The man and his son started breaking the horses so that they could sell them on the market, and one of the horses threw the man's son and stomped on his leg. It broke and it healed crooked. The neighbors came around again and said, "He was such a fine young lad, and now he'll never be able to find a girl to marry him." He shrugged his shoulder and said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" That summer, the king of the country declared war on a neighboring country. Press gangs moved through the villages, rounding up all the able-bodied young men. But this man's son was spared because he had a game leg. And the neighbors had tears in their eyes, and they said, "We don't know if we will ever see our sons alive again, but you still have your son. How fortunate are you?" And the man shrugged his shoulder and said, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" And it goes on like that forever. There's a very instructive tale here. And let me ask you a question. Can you recall any instance in your life that when it happened, you thought this is terrible, but looking back on it now, with the perspective of time and perhaps greater wisdom, you can say this was actually pretty good? Some of my students at London Business School got a job in the City of London. That's the London equivalent of Wall Street. And when the financial crisis hit, one of them was laid off. He was unhappy for a while, but he never really liked his job, so he bounced back, took a vacation, and started a business. He was one of the early persons to be laid off, and he got a very healthy severance. The severance he got was actually the seed money he used to start his business. So he was actually fortunate to be laid off. In your own life, something is happening now which you're about to label bad. Can you think of any way in which in a few years this could actually be a good thing? Just asking yourself this question will put you in a different emotional frame. And if you then take the next step and say, is there anything I can do to actually make this a good thing? Pathways will open up that you would never even have considered. When something happens to you and you don't label it a bad thing, you don't suffer. That's one of the ways in which you become resilient. The benevolent universe actually is something that I stole from Albert Einstein. Now, we think of Albert Einstein as a great scientist, and he was, but he was also a philosopher who had an incredible understanding of the way the world works. Einstein said, the most important question you're ever going to ask is the universe friendly? There are a few people who believe the universe is unfriendly and the sole purpose of the universe is to make things difficult for you. In all likelihood, you and the vast majority of everybody you know believes that the universe is indifferent to you. Sometimes it seems to be working with you, at other times it's at cross purposes, and most of the time it just does its thing. So you do your thing, the universe does its thing, it's not aware of you and couldn't care less. That's the universe we live in. But let's assume the universe is friendly. Friends don't shaft friends, do they? They don't. So if something happens to you which you think, hey, this is bad, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's exactly what you needed. Look at it this way. If you're an infant, you want a tub of ice cream. Your parents give you fruits and vegetables. You don't want fruits and vegetables. You want ice cream. And it's only much later when you have a different level of maturity and understanding that you can say, boy, am I grateful my parents gave me fruit and vegetables. In exactly the same way, the universe might be giving you something now that you don't want. But what if this was exactly what you needed at this precise moment for your learning and growth? Now, a little examination of this will tell you that regardless of whether or not the universe is friendly, if you believed the universe was friendly, your life would improve significantly. But what if the universe actually was friendly? I'd like you to go back and think in terms of how you live your life. Most of us are trained to be goal-oriented. So we set a goal for ourselves, and then we perform activities that are designed to help us achieve our goal, and we live our lives according to this way. I set a goal for myself, I succeeded, life's a blast. I set a goal for myself, I failed, life sucks. We live our lives on a sinusoidal curve going between elation and despair, and we generally spend more time at the despair end of the spectrum. This is not a very nice way to live. There is an alternative, and the alternative is the following. Forget about the goals. Goals are very important, but they're important only because they set direction. Once the direction has been set, don't give a second thought to the goal. Instead, clearly envision the activities that you have to undertake to reach your goal and put all of your emotional energy into the activity. That's what you think about. Forget about the goal. When you invest in the activities, when you invest in the process, two things happen. You actually start enjoying the journey. The journey is the only thing you have. The destination is a mirage. You're there today, you're off someplace else tomorrow. The journey is with you always. So when you invest in the process, you are actually enjoying the journey. And paradoxically, the more you are detached from the outcome, the more you don't particularly care whether you reach the goal or not, the higher the probability that you will actually reach it. You are not doing because you want to achieve something which will bring stress into your life. You're doing because that is your path in the universe. That is what the universe is guiding you. So you're doing the very best that you're capable of, but whether or not you succeed does not matter. And whether or not you succeed doesn't matter, the probability of your succeeding actually increases. Let me explain. John Wooden was the first person to reach the Basketball Hall of Fame, both as a player and as a coach. He led UCLA to an unprecedented number of victories in the NCAA tournaments. And he used to say, whenever I worked with a new team, I never talked about winning or outscoring opponents. I always talked about when it was over and you looked in the mirror, did you do the best that you were capable of? If you did the best you were capable of, the score doesn't matter. But if you did the best you were capable of, I fancy you'll find the score to your liking. That's exactly the way it works. You do the very best you can, but when you focus on the activities, you are not under stress. What you want is the goal, And once you have established that, you have established direction. After you have established direction, you then let it go. You do not obsess about it. You do not look at it every 5 seconds and say, am I there yet? Trust the universe will provide you what is needed at the precise time you need it. You will do your part of it, which is all the activities that you have identified that lead to the goal, you will perform with the utmost diligence with every fiber of your being. As it seems as if the universe is bending itself to help you, it goes before you to make the crooked path straight. Anything that you need comes to you at precisely the time that you need it. Here's something that I would like you to be aware of. We spend way too much time agonizing over the 2, 3, or 4 things that are wrong in our lives. More precisely, on the 2, 3, or 4 things that we've arbitrarily decided are wrong with our life. And we completely ignore the 40, 50, 60 things that are actually pretty darn good about our lives. So, flip that around. Consciously bring to mind how fortunate you are in so many ways and feel appreciation and gratitude. Now, I must stress that this is an experiential exercise, not an intellectual one. So you can't make a list and check things off. You can't say, good health, check. Food to eat, check. Roof overhead, check. It doesn't work like that. You have to genuinely feel gratitude, let it well up from the soles of your feet, go through your body, and come out through your mouth. If you are a type A person who lives in his or her head, it may take some time before you get from thinking gratitude to feeling gratitude. But if you do that, you will find that your experience of life is transformed. I recommend that you do this last thing at night, but don't stop doing it just once last thing at night. Do it many times during the day. And my wish for you, my vision for you, is that you live in a world where appreciation and gratitude is your normal, habitual, emotional domain. And when you do that, you'll find that life is ever so much blessed, ever so much fun. When you feel something, it resonates in the very fiber of your being, and that is what makes transformation possible. Number 5, you can reframe whatever reality you are facing. Let me give you an example of this. When my daughter was born, I had just finished my PhD at Columbia Business School, and I had a lot of friends who had children who were slightly older than my daughter. And they were very solicitous, and they came up and said, you know, I have a crib. Would you like a crib? I have a high chair. Would you like a high chair? What about a stroller? I have one that I'm not using. And I said, of course, bring them on. I saved a bundle doing that, and it's nice. When my son was born, unfortunately, I had no friends who were so giving. So he got new strollers, new high chairs, new cribs. It didn't strike me as any big deal, but my daughter was really upset. She came up and asked me, Daddy, how come my brother got new stuff and I had old stuff? I brushed it off. I thought it would go, but it didn't. She would keep coming up to me and she wanted to know why she got used furniture. It became apparent to me that I could not duck this issue. One day I had a flash of inspiration. So I went up to my daughter and said, I realize that you got used stuff. Your brother got new stuff. But there is something you got new, which is so much more important than anything your brother will ever get, that it more than makes up for that. In fact, if for the rest of your life you only get used stuff and he gets new stuff, this will still put you ahead. My daughter was puzzled. She didn't believe it, but she was also curious. So she said, what did I get new that my brother got used? So I leaned forward conspiratorially and said, you got brand new parents. Your brother got used parents. there was a moment, and then there was a big smile on her face, and that problem went away forever. It's a funny tale, but it's also an instructive tale because you have the ability to reframe any situation which you are confronting. For example, your partner gets really angry at you. You recognize that it's not anything that you did, but that she has an emotional need. She wants to know that you support her. She wants to know that you care for her. Can you see beyond the expression of anger to there is a need she has that you can fulfill? There are many different occasions when you see this is what happens. And the way you see this is what happens is part of the problem. You can look back and say, I think this is the way it happens, but here is another way of looking at it. And when you use that other way of looking at it, the problem dissolves. Reframing is an extremely powerful technique. You have to learn to use it and experiment with it, but try it. Let's talk about what resilience is. Resilience is when something happens that deforms you, and then you go back to what you were like before. Now, when something happens that deforms us, we're generally talking about a life event that is not the way we would like it to be. But the universe is always going to be doing stuff to you. You are in the human predicament. As long as you're in the human predicament, stuff will happen. Business reverses, financial setbacks, relationship problems, illness, serious illness and death. That's part of the human predicament. Each of these is a stressor. When these happen, you have basically two choices. Feces drops from the sky. And when feces drops from the sky, you can do one or two things. You can get messy, or you can put up your transparent plastic umbrella and say, look at the pretty shades of yellow. The methods that I have advocated will enable you to put up your transparent plastic umbrella and say, look at the pretty shades of yellow. The vast majority of courses in a top business school give you information. They give you techniques. Here's how you do financial analysis. Here's how you make marketing plans. Very few of them deal with the territory that is between your ears, your inner landscape. Very few of them deal with what do you want out of life? What do you want your life to be like? What makes you happy? What gives you a sense of purpose? In most cases, educational institutions don't even acknowledge these questions, much less deal with them. In Creativity and Personal Mastery, we tackle them head on. This program does not answer these questions, but it gives you a powerful framework whereby you can analyze your situation and come up with an answer that's uniquely appropriate for who you are. For many years, this program was only available to students at whichever top business school I was teaching. I have now worked with Mind Valley to take the significant teachings and exercise of this program and make it available to a much broader audience on the Mind Valley platform. As you look at the world differently, you literally become a different person. After you've gone through the program, you have a greater sense of direction, a greater sense of purpose, a deeper satisfaction with where you are in life, and the confidence that you're moving in the direction that is right for you. In my program, behavioral change happens and it lasts. And the reason it does is because it does not happen by an effort of will. It happens because you alter the mental models you hold, and as you make changes in different mental models, you quite literally become a different person. And as you become a different person, your behavior changes automatically. If you have an open mind, you can learn to create serendipitous opportunities. You can enroll below, and I look forward to seeing you on this journey.
Be prepared to have your mind blown.
I took Srikumar Rao's course in 2013, and it completely changed my life.
It's really a process to understand yourself.
Einstein actually had a pretty deep understanding of the human predicament and the human being's role in the universe.
Professor Rao has, done work studying some of the greatest minds on the planet. So as a result of which the foundation behind it is so solid, so robust. It's a different experience, but it is one that comes with a lot of gravitas.
Your mind is the most powerful computer you're ever going to work with. If you can improve its operating system, every aspect of your experience of life changes.
It really teaches you how to have better relationships. After I took the course, my wife took the course, and we had close friends who took the course, and our friendships and our interactions are much superior to what they were before.
Some of the best personal time that you could give yourself. What it allows me to do is to be a much more flexible person than I was. As long as I'm getting better, everyone else around me benefits from that.
The most important decision you will ever make in your life is the universe friendly?
Well, the best investment an employer can make in their employee is to continue to grow personally and professionally.
The takeaway from Srikumar Rao was that I won't have stress if I choose so. I can choose whether I like to be stressed or not. Thank you for that.
We all want to have certainty. We want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, the day after, and the day after. But life doesn't work that way. With the best will in the world, you set off to achieve an outcome, and it doesn't happen. When you take this program, you're not concerned about whether or not a particular outcome that you desire will come to pass. No matter what happens, you have great confidence in your ability to behave appropriately and deal with it as necessary. You don't consciously learn to improve your relationships improve automatically. Because what happens is we tend to live our lives in a me-centered universe. We're always looking at what's the impact on me. And many of the exercises in the quest are designed to get you to look at the world from an other-centered perspective. And as you do that, you find that others respond to you differently. Relationships improve as a byproduct, not as something that you consciously set out to do. Once again, this is something that happens as a byproduct. So let me tell you a little bit about leadership. Most of us want to be an inspiring leader. And what I say is, if you want to be an inspiring leader, you're pretty well advanced on the wrong path. Because when you want to be an inspiring leader, it's all about you. I want to be an inspiring leader. What you're really saying is, I want people to do what I would like them to do, which perhaps they don't want to do. So I've got to figure out how to get people to do what I want them to do when they don't want to do what I want them to do, which means I want to manipulate people, which is not a very nice thing to do. So if you want to be an inspiring leader, forget about being an inspiring leader. Instead, be personally inspired. When you're inspired by a great cause, something which brings a greater good to a greater community, and you learn to communicate this vision that you have, you become an inspiring leader by default. It's like when Gandhi was starting his work in South Africa. He didn't say, I want to inspire tens of millions of people. His thought was, the passport laws are unjust and I will not let them stand. And he was a British-trained attorney. He had verbal fluency, so he used whatever skills he had to mobilize the port for this. And because of this and his later work against colonial rule in India, millions of people did in fact become inspired by him. That's how it happens. You find a cause, you become inspired, you learn to communicate your vision, you become an inspiring leader by default. Once again, that's a byproduct. As you start working on yourself, you develop a presence, a gravitas. As you start living in an other-centered universe and you genuinely look to see how you can be of service to a greater community, that communicates itself in a dozen subtle ways. And persons are attracted to that. And they're attracted to the sense of calmness and peace they see in you, and they want that for themselves. So they come and ask you, what do you do? How can I be like that? When you're goal-oriented, you're constantly looking to see, did I reach my goal or did I not? And you're subject to mood swings. When you focus on the process, you start enjoying the journey. As you start enjoying the journey, you find that you're much more effective. Every time when you take your attention off reaching a particular outcome into what are the things under my control, and that's the only thing you focus on, you're more effective and more efficient. Anxiety is when there is an outcome that you dread. Will this happen to me? The methods and techniques that I outline, and these are drawn from the world's greatest masters, leave you confident. No matter what happens, I will be able to deal with it. If that's the case, why are you afraid? Let the universe throw the worst it can, and it won't throw the worst it can because it's benevolent. So what are you afraid of? One of the things that we learn in this program is that you have a greater goal, something that brings a greater good to a greater community. As you become imbued in that, you find that you can devote a big chunk of your life, if not your entire life, a big chunk of your life to that. That feeds into you and gives you a sense of purpose. That is what makes you get up in the morning with your blood singing. You will find that your greatest joy comes not from grabbing something for yourself, but from being of service to a broader community. I look forward to being your guide in the near future.